20. So if you've got your Bible, open up your Bible to Matthew chapter 20. And we're going to be in verses 17 to the end of the chapter, 17 to 34. And the question, or the sermon today is, what do you want? What do you want? And normally on this day, it is Palm Sunday. Normally on this day, you get maybe 21, chapter 21, which is the ride into Jerusalem. And I'm certain there's plenty of messages out there. In fact, Thad Decker did one there today on Palm Sunday, did a great job. And that is the United Methodist Church of Halifax, right? If you want to get on there later on today or go there, Thad Decker, I think you can get it that way on Facebook as well, and be able to look at that. And I'm going to share it also for you to be able to hear that message as well. We did a message together this past week, and it was a Lent message that I was able to do over there, and just loved being able to be there at their church, and just Thad and I, that was it, there in the church, and but God was there. And a lot of people were able to view that, so you can look at that as well a little bit later. But Matthew chapter 20, and beginning in verse 17. And the question we're going to ask today is, what do you want? And the reason why I'm saying this, at the end of this present crisis, what do you want? We're in the midst of a crisis here in our nation, whether, and it can be an argument, probably, you got half the crowd probably saying, well, it's a fake crisis. It's a fake crisis probably to those who haven't had a member of their family die yet, certainly. And not until it gets really close to us, all of a sudden we start to get more in crisis mode. But certainly, whether we believe it or not, whoever we're listening to, nonetheless, honestly, this has probably changed our life over the last couple of weeks, and it probably will in the future, for a while, change our lives. And that's kind of, in some cases, slowed people down, and that's a good thing. In fact, today, as we were getting ready, and we were listening to the news today, one of the Sunday morning programs, and I said to Shirley, while they were talking about it, I said, probably most people are going to find out that if they develop high-speed internet into the country areas, we're getting it supposedly this summer here, probably about 50% of people could do their job from home, and that's what they're going to find out. A lot of these offices, things like that, I think companies are going to find out that they can do more with less. And people are going to find out also that they might be able to do more with less. And certainly if that's what we're going to learn during this time, certainly that's a good thing. And many people are afraid. People are afraid during this time. And hopefully during this time, if you're concerned, if you're afraid, hopefully you come out of this thing realizing that there's a God in heaven, who since the beginning when he created this thing and it fell, when man fell in the garden, there have been crisis after crisis, and you know what? The world still continues on, right? And, maybe it's not in our neck of the woods, maybe it's not in our part, but nonetheless, there's crisis and it continues on. And if you think about it, I tried to put this into perspective, but I was talking to Shirley, we were talking a little bit about what's going to happen when this is all over with, or in the middle, what's going to happen. She works for a Christian school that's a non-profit, and as long as the people keep paying the tuition, even though their kids are at home learning, if they can get a hold of that, then it's going to continue on. She'll keep getting paid, our insurance will keep getting paid, all those kind of things. And even though they have, come out and said, oh no, we're going to make sure that you get paid, we're going to make sure that your insurance continues. They don't know the future, right? They don't really know the future. And we were talking about it, and I said, what's the worst that can happen in your life during a time like this, right? Kind of puts it in perspective. The other day on Facebook, I saw a missionary, and she was bent over, and there was this little fellow that wasn't 3 feet tall. And he was naked, and he was definitely malnourished. And a little fellow over in Africa, and she was bent over with a water bottle and leaning down and giving him a drink. And that little fellow was just standing there, and it said, boy, it sure puts it in perspective, right? When we complain because we can't go, to our favorite restaurant and sit down and have a good time on Easter Sunday, when we can't, travel around like we did before, or maybe, just maybe, my bills might get behind or something like, put that into perspective, right? And ask ourselves, are we too dependent sometimes on those kind of things? And we haven't made ourselves dependent upon the Lord. The biggest thing about this, when it's all over with, they're going to battle back and forth. And it's an election year. So either side will be the hero and either side will be the villain. And, that's the way they'll paint it. And, beware of people who use a crisis, right, in order to be able to gain themselves. Even Jesus said that when he went in, amazingly enough, the day after Palm Sunday, when he went in and chased out the money changers out of the temple because they were using a crisis in order to be able to make money. Think about that. Hopefully we'll learn something, right? Hopefully we'll come out of this different. So the question's going to be, at the end of this present crisis, just what do you want? What do you want? Not what you're going to do, but what do you want? Have you envisioned what it's going to be like? What do you want? And we're going to kind of look at this beginning in this passage. Now this passage, beginning in verse 17, Jesus is on his way into Jerusalem. He is going to go through Jericho. This is a day or so before he gets into Jerusalem, where he's going to ride in that day on that donkey. And they're going to, rejoice, and they're going to call him, they're going to say, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." And the Pharisees are going to be upset, and the religious leaders, because it's not the way it's supposed to be, that kind of thing. And many people look at what church is all about, and they're realizing that church basically has come down to not what we thought it was, right? I mean, think about it. Do we really have to, in many cases, have all the bells and whistles and all those things? No, it's really all about meeting the needs of people, isn't it? And it's not about the best entertainment that's out there. It's not about the, how good I felt when I went there. How about it's how we can serve our fellow man when we go back to church, right? How we can come back and encourage other people who maybe we have not been through so much crisis, but maybe they have been during this time. Just read on Facebook this morning that a fellow that went to school with passed away this past week. He was a pastor down in Florida, died of a massive heart attack. And he's gone, just like that. Had nothing to do with the crisis, so it's not going to get covered, of course. But nonetheless, his family during this time is grieving. So what's it really all about? As Jesus comes in that day, he wants to kind of clear it up. What is this journey about? What is, this is going to be Passover. There are going to be a lot of people there. This is going to be an opportunity. They have been waiting since Daniel chapter 9, and Daniel's 70 weeks. Daniel was looking at Jeremiah's prophecy about this 70 weeks, and he prays about it, and God gives him an answer. And if you take those days, and I'm going to do it later on this week, keep watching on Facebook, but I'm going to lay out those days for you, and those days are exactly, if you take the time from the time that the order went forward to rebuild the temple, and you take that the exact amount of days that God said it would be until Messiah the Prince rides into Jerusalem, it comes out to Palm Sunday, the day Jesus rode into Jerusalem, the exact day. Now, were they looking for an exact day? No, they knew it was close. And so his disciples are going along, and Jesus is they're thinking with Jesus that, here's an opportunity. This is your opportunity at Passover. More people will be there, and it's your opportunity to kind of bring the kingdom. But Jesus has, of course, a different plan, right? And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to begin with Jesus' plan in verses 17 to 19. Look at this. It said, "Now Jesus, going up to Jerusalem, took the 12 disciples aside on the road and said to them," by the way, there's something very interesting about this. And Max Lucado, a great writer, I've been reading a book this past week, and I believe it's "And the Angels Were Silent." But if you want to read a good book, I got 2 copies. If you want to read, I will give you the other copy. But if not, get that on, whether you get it on electronic or whatever. Man, what a great book. And he's a great writer, and he's talking about this very setting, but he's talking about out of Mark. And Mark brings up something really interesting. Jesus, we often find him inside the crowd, so close that people are touching him, those kind of things, He's always walking within the crowd. He's always like talking with people. He's always ministering to people. He's being confronted by people. But many times it says they're around him, like it's a multitude around him. But in this case, Mark points out the fact, which is, as we talked about last week, probably Peter's perspective, right? That Jesus led them. For the first time, he was like out in front of them. And there walks Jesus by himself out there in front, because you see, Jesus was bent on a mission. He was bent on a plan. And as he's out there in front of them, he leads them. He takes them aside. He takes the 12 aside on the road, and then he gives to them what his plan is. What's his plan? Look at verse 18. Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem. And they're like, woo, we know that. We're going up to Jerusalem. But what's the plan? And the Son of Man, I could stop there and he probably could say it. And I've done this before when I used to teach school. Try to get them to give me the rest of the story. And I'm like, and the Son of Man, and you stop, and then they, come on, people, what is it? And, maybe the disciples would yell out, he's going to be crowned as the king. He's going to be crowned as the Messiah. He's going to put away the Roman government. He's going to, all these things that, in their minds, we're going to find out at the next section, that they were thinking it. And they were hoping it. Because the chapter before, he had talked about to a rich man that in order to be able to get to heaven, he'd have to give up everything and, give it to the poor because he was covetous. Jesus always talked to people about their sin, and his sin was covetousness. And he walked away sad, and Jesus said, that's why it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to get to heaven. Isn't it amazing, by the way, in the prosperity gospel, that that's what they talk about, getting rich? That God wants you to get rich, and yet Jesus talked more about people that were rich that weren't getting it. And the Apostle Paul talked about people that were rich that weren't getting it. They warned us, be careful of people that's all that they talk about. James talked about. And amazing as that is, we still have the wrong perspective that somehow God is going to make us all rich, right? God's going to make us all rich, and that's not the way that it works. In fact, look at God's plan. He finishes it, Jesus does. Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and to the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and to scourge and to crucify, and the third day he will rise again. Look at that plan. That's a detailed plan, right? That's a detailed plan. The Son of Man is going to be betrayed. That's the first part, right? By the way, he pulled the 12 aside and said this. So Judas is standing there. And he's hearing. Now, whether Judas had already started thinking about, pushing this thing along, I don't know. But point blank, he's going to be betrayed, the Son of Man. Then they are going to condemn him to death, the Sanhedrin. He'll have a trial before the Sanhedrin. They will condemn him to death. But you know what? They can't pass the death sentence on him and execute him. So what do they have to do? They got the Romans. He's delivered him to the Gentiles, who will mock and scourge him and then crucify him. Can you imagine? That was the worst death of that day. And yet as he stands there with his disciples, he's going to spell it out. They're going to crucify the Son of Man. And by the way, Son of Man, that shows up back in Daniel chapter 7, where there's a vision of the Son of Man coming with the Ancient of Days, God. And the Son of Man is, every Jew knew when he said those words, he's talking Messiah. He's talking God's Son, the Son of Man. And he could have called himself anything. Remember in John he had all the I ams. He could have called himself anything throughout the scriptures. He could have called himself King of Kings. He could have called himself anything. But you realize 81 times from the lips of Jesus, he calls himself the Son of Man. No wonder they didn't like him. No wonder the Sanhedrin wanted him dead. He's calling himself God, right? He's calling himself Messiah. And boy, his disciples, no doubt, when he hit Son of Man again, they were getting excited. They're like, woo, this is going to be the time. And he's going to, tell them the kingdom is here and all those things. And boom, man, he's got miracles in his hands. What more do we need? And instead he says, no, he'll be betrayed. Yeah. The chief priests and scribes will pass a death sentence on him. The Romans will carry it out. They'll mock him. They'll scourge him. They will crucify him. Think about that. We're not talking they will imprison him like they did John the Baptist or something, or they will, send him out of Jerusalem, reject him or something. No, they will crucify him. But then he lays on some good news, right? Look at the end of that. And the third day he will rise again. He tells it, right? And when you get down to the end, you realize sometimes, when you tell people stuff, sometimes they only hear what they want to hear, right? They only get part of it. You tell a story or something, they only get the parts of the story they want. That's why, in order to get a good story all put together, you got to bring everybody back together and say, what did he say now? Right? I'm glad we had 4 Gospels so they could get the story straight under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, right? That's why they did it 4 times, 4 different perspectives. But they only listen to what they really want to hear. I love my son. My son's, amazing person. Probably watching right now. But, amazing guy. By the way, number one at Sprint, where he works. Number 1 in the region. Number 1 regional guy, in fact, voted or told this past week by Chantel. You're at the top, buddy. And I'm proud of that, right? You proud of your kids? Yeah, and you can't help it. I'm telling you that because I'm proud of it. Listen, I'm not telling that because you needed to hear that information. And that now you feel better. I'm telling you that because that's my son, right? Think about that when you're witnessing to other people. You're not telling them because you necessarily love them. You tell them because you love the Lord, right? But as you talk about this, my son, when he was growing up, I would look at him. We're doing a project, right? And I would say to my son, I'd say, go to the garage, go to the toolbox, get me that 9/16 wrench and bring it back. And he'd be gone right after I said, go to the garage. And he would pour out there in the garage, and he'd be out there for a while. And he'd come back and he'd say, what am I doing in the garage? He wasn't even old like me, where I go out and go, what am I doing in the garage, right? And so then, so it was like, no, stop. So after a while, I'd say, no, stop. Listen to every word I say. And Jesus here, as you look at this, Jesus, it was the same way with the disciples. Because when he rises from the dead, it will say, because we did not yet know that he was going to rise from the dead. When they hear about it. When they go to the empty tomb. And it's like, what? I'm reading it right here, buddy. All 12 of you were pulled aside one day because, they weren't thinking about Jesus' plan. They were thinking about their own plan. And the Lord had a plan. I got news for you, by the way. During this time of crisis, God's got a plan. He's got a plan for you. And it doesn't include going back to the way we lived before. It doesn't include having the same priorities maybe that we had before. I think this is really a good wake-up call for a lot of people to figure out what's really necessary, what's really, and I'm not talking about essential jobs or anything like that. I'm talking about necessary as far as your family. What's really important. So many families have come together and done things together that they hadn't done in years, Sitting around and talking, can you imagine that? Talking. I mean, we've been guilty, the church has been guilty of this as much as mankind. Because you watch, you see these churches, and churches sometimes will say, we're having family night. And family night, everybody gets to the property. The little kids go to one room. The youth goes to another room. Young marriage or something goes to another room. And the older of us go to another room. And it's like, that's not family night. That's everybody separated, right? Family night's everybody does something together, right? Where they can see Grandma and Grandpa sitting there looking at the Word of God. When they can see their mom and their dad saying amen to the Word of God. Watch what worship is supposed to be. You see, that's really what it should be. And this has kind of brought us down to that. So what we've got here is we've got Jesus, and he has got his plan. He can't be stopped from this plan. Now, there's a story of a guy by the name of Jim Bonham. Anybody know who Jim Bonham is out there? Yeah, he was at the Alamo. One of those who died at the Alamo. He was from South Carolina. He was a lawyer. And when they realized they were going to be so outnumbered, before Sanhedrin even got there with his thousands, they sent him. He got on a horse and he rode through the middle of the line. He broke through the line, and he went to the closest help that he could find in military. And he walked into the captain. He explained to them how many they had, how many sent. And his answer he got from them was, "We will consider it." And we know how they considered it by history, right? They didn't go help him. And so the words told, and James Michener, when he did Texas, the novel Texas, he imagined this conversation going on as he was getting his horse ready, and he was going to ride back to the Alamo. What? Yeah, he was going to ride back to the Alamo. Even though he just gave the news that they were going to be slaughtered, he was going to ride back to the Alamo. And there's a story that there's a little young person standing there and says to him, "Where will you go?" And he says, "Well, I'm going back to the Alamo." And the kid said, "Alone?" And he said, "I came here alone." And he gets on his horse and he rides off. And as they see him riding off, he looks at his father, the kid does, and he says, "If it's so bad there, then why is he going back?" To which the father answers, "I don't think he ever considered anything else." Yeah, exactly. He rode. He knew what was going to happen. Well, Jesus here knew what was going to happen before the world was created, before there was ever a bite of the fruit, before there was ever... He knew what was going to happen, the sovereign God, and he had set his face, the Bible describes it, set his face toward the cross, set his face toward Jerusalem. That was his plan, that no matter what, he was going to do what the Father said he would to do. Now, other than that, let's look at the next plan, the disciples' plan. Disciples' plan. Then, verse 20. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons were James and John. They came to him with her sons, kneeling down and asking something from him. So you could kind of excuse it here a little if we just said it was mom that came, you know? Because, you know, you moms there, you want what's best for your kids, right? And if you could call their employer, hopefully you haven't, but if you could call their employer, you know, then, you know, you would, right? You want what, and so you could kind of give it for mom, but guess what? The two sons come with her, right? Because it says they came with her. That's what the Bible says. So they just heard this thing from Jesus, and now what is there? Because they're still thinking, whoo, we're going to have a kingdom. Oh, wait a minute, what did I just say? So moms and dads, teachers out there, pastors, whoever, when you tell somebody and they don't pay attention to anything you say, you're in good company. Because the disciples are missing it too, right? And while we might be really hard on them, let's not be too hard on them, because what's going on right now in our life, we're missing it sometimes. We're not listening to God. We're not taking the opportunity to dust off the Bible and read it to our family or to read it for ourselves during this time and just ask God, God, what do you want from me, right? And so she comes, and look at verse 21. I love what Jesus said to her. What do you want? What do you wish? So that's the big question, right? She comes. What do you want? She said to him, grant that the two sons of mine may sit one on your right hand and the other on your left in your kingdom. But Jesus answered and said, do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I'm about to drink and to be baptized with the baptism that I'm about to be baptized with? And they said, we are able. You don't understand what's going to happen. Are you able to drink the cup of suffering? Are you able to be baptized with this baptism of death like I'm going to? And amazingly enough, they looked at him and said, oh yeah, we're ready. And you're thinking, how terrible is James and John? Well, just a few minutes, the other 10 are going to weigh in on it, okay? Because they're thinking the same thing. They just haven't got their mom there to help them out, right? Yeah. They said, we are. And so he looks at them and says, you indeed will drink my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I'm baptized with. Yes, you'll go through suffering. Yes, you'll be a part of this salvation one day. But to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it's for those whom it is prepared by my Father. That's out of my hands. I can't give that assurance. And today, you know, folks, I can't give you an assurance that everything's going to go back to being like it was. In fact, I hope it isn't. Because we're kind of headed the wrong direction in many things, aren't we? Some things that were so important to us, we found out we really didn't need. And if we long more, for instance, if we long more for sports to get back on TV, if we long more for our favorite steak restaurant to open up than we do for the church to be able to be opened back up, maybe we're on the wrong end of this thing, right? Think about that. Our priorities. If it all goes away today, what really do we need, right? God of heaven, that's it, right? So he says that, and look at verse 24, when the 10 heard it, they were greatly displeased with the two brothers. They were angry. The 10 all of a sudden say, hold on, you got your mother, seriously? You got your mother to come in and talk? How about us? And it's almost in the answer here that either they don't listen to the answer or they're thinking, great, now those guys just blew the answer for all of us, right? Seriously? Or maybe they were thinking, yeah, he just said it's not up to him, but it's up to the Father, and probably I'm one of those, right? So they're thinking, whatever they're thinking, it's the wrong thing, right? Because look what Jesus said. Jesus called them to himself again, and he said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them. In other words, the way you're talking about, because you want to rule over other people, is that what you're going to get out of this? That you're going to come out on top? Already I'm certain with people, the wheels are already turning on how much money they can make coming out of this thing. And that's really all that they think about. In the meantime, maybe they're pushing their kids away because they're over here planning on, how they can, what can I come up with at the end of this? It's going to be about me, right? I kind of had a laugh though, Facebook and social media is a lot of people posting selfies, in the best light, high up and all that stuff. And I've noticed that since we haven't been able to get to the hairdressers and stuff, that nobody's doing that anymore, right? Yeah. Because we don't want to look at the worst light, right? And if we do come on, we're dressed as something crazy and pretending that's the way we don't look all the time, right? Yeah. Because everybody wants to, right? They want to, look their best to other people. Now, Beth back there, she's got her own hairdresser at home. So I'm really jealous. She can do selfies all day long. But as we look at this, the Gentiles, that's the way the world thinks. And we as Christians should not be thinking, how am I going to be able to build my empire back when this is over? People right now, by the way, even during this time, it's crazy. We went into Lynchburg yesterday to drop off our granddaughter after our grandson had been born on Friday. And she stayed with Grandpa and Grandma and all that. And we went by, and as we were going by, they live right near Lowe's. Lowe's parking lot was the most full I've ever seen it. Of people social distancing. No, of people out there. There must have been 500 people in that store. I'm not kidding. People were driving through the aisles trying to find a place to park. There were so many cars. And immediately people are like, oh yeah, well, I got to plant the garden, man, I got to build this, I'm going to do a little renovation during this time, and they're already, thinking about how they can build up their kingdom, right? And they're so busy doing those things that maybe they're going to really miss what God has for them when they come out of this. They're going to come back bigger and better. See, we as Americans, it's sad, but we as human beings and Americans, what's really throwing people is that we can't fix this thing with our hands. And people are frustrated. You watch the media and they're asking, well, when is this going to happen? Or how is this going to happen? Listen, folks, they're not future tellers. They're not fortune tellers up there, right? They can only look at models and patterns and all that kind of stuff and guess. And, the person who guesses the best at the end will be standing around going, I told you so, because I'm better than you, right? Yeah, that's the way it's going to play out. Because guess what? We're so full of ourselves that we're acting like we don't need God at all. And that's our problem. Maybe we need to have more of a pandemic in the United States in order to be able to humble us a little bit more. because we can't fix the world. The world, people have been dying for thousands of years, right? There have been pandemics all over. There's been earthquakes. There's been everything happening like that. And you know what? We can't change that. But there is a God in heaven, right? I like that. What Daniel said one day. But there is a God in heaven. So hopefully we come out of this. Because notice what he said. Yet it shall not be so among you. We're not supposed to be like the world. Whoever desires to become great among you, let him be a servant. Hopefully we come out of this serving our neighbor, right? And there's been great stories of people that have, there was a Halifax officer I saw on Facebook. News got a hold of it. He went by and saw this lawn that was, a little bit unkept, even though normally it's kept really well. And he stopped by and found out that, this elderly couple had been a little under the weather. And he mowed the lawn. And some other people jumped on that and helped mow the lawn as well. Hopefully that's, we'll start looking out for each other, right? We do out here in the country anyway, but you know what? Hopefully we'll quit competing with our neighbor and trying to stay up with them and rather serve them, show them who Jesus is, right? Because whoever desires to be first among you, he says, let him be a slave. Just as the Son of Man, there it is again, did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. A ransom for many. Listen, I recently, because slowed down a lot, got out some of my old songs, Some of you maybe have done that. I found an iPod mini, if you can imagine that. I think I put these songs on there about the year 2004 or something like that. It's still working. It's ancient for some of you that are out there. You're thinking, oh, Mr. Feather should be in a museum. But, okay. So it's a mini, and there was a group called Casting Crowns back in the day. And boy, you want to hear some lyrics that it's not your doo-wop, Jesus is great. These are hard-hitting lyrics that come right to you and said, what is wrong with us, right? It's almost prophetic. You got Casting Crowns. You got to look them up on YouTube. But they had one called The American Dream. And I'll be honest with you, every time I hear this song, it brings tears to my eyes. In fact, when I'm alone and I'll cry when I hear this song because I knew a guy, and just like yesterday, my son and I are riding in the car listening to this, and I looked at him and I said, Greg, with tears in my eyes, I said, Greg, this is just like, and it was a fellow at our church. And he was chasing it, man. He was chasing it because he thought that was going to keep the family together and make the family happy. He didn't have much when he grew up, so he was going to give everything to his family he could, and he thought that was the answer. And in the end, you know what? He lost his family. And now this was before he lost his family when I told Greg. It's like him, and I said, I got to work on him. I got to talk to him, and I tried. He just couldn't listen. It's too far down the road, that kind of thing. Lost his family. Oh, he went out and found another family later, But he lost the first family, and it's just tragic. But it was like the American dream. And that goes this way. I got some of the lyrics here today. I'll read some of it for you. It begins with, all work and no play may have made Jack a dull boy, but all work and no God has left Jack with a lost soul. But he's moving on full steam. He's chasing the American dream. He's going to give his family the finer things. Not this time, son. I've no time to waste. Maybe tomorrow we'll have time to play. Then he slips into his new BMW and drives farther and farther and farther away. So he works all day and he tries to sleep at night. He says things will get better in time. And he works and he builds with his own two hands. He pours all he has into a castle made with sand. But the wind and the rains come crashing in. Time will tell just how long his kingdom stands. Wow. And you can go back and get the rest of that. The end of it says this. He used to say, whoever dies with the most toys wins. But if he loses his soul, was he gained in the end? I'll take a shack on the rock over a castle in the sand. Now he works all day and he cries alone at night. It's not getting any better. Looks like he's running out of time. Because he worked and he built with his own two hands. He poured all he had into a castle made with sand. Let the wind and the rain come crashing in. Time will tell just how long his kingdom stands. And all they really wanted was you. All they really wanted was you. And you think about the priority. Look at this. Their priority is to, in this case, is all about the temporal, right? Is that our priority during this time? During this time we come out of this, is it going to be business as usual, back to the ball fields on Sunday, back to, the beach, back to getting away, and showing our family really what our priorities are? Or is it going to be a priority that has to do with, God gives us our children. I remember when my little boy was born, and I held him in my arm. He fit right here on my arm. I can't believe that he's 6'1" now, right? But he fit right here, right? And I looked down at him one day, shortly was getting ready for church, and I'm holding him that first week. He was born on a Monday, and we're getting ready to go to church on that Sunday. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking down into as he's asleep there on my arm, and I'm thinking, I'm not ready for this. God, you've given me this little human, and I'm going to mess this up. You know what? It's worth more than anything in the world. That if our kids don't get their earthly dream, but they get heaven, that's really what's important, folks. And I know I chased the American dream, even as a pastor, and pastors do that. Try to keep up with the next pastor over the next, keep up with the Joneses, and in the end, you could lose your family. Many pastors lose their family to hell. Don't let that be you as you chase the American dream. Look at the end here, by the way. The last guys, look at the two blind men's plan. This is great. Now as they went out of Jericho, verse 29, a great multitude followed him. Behold, two blind men sitting by the road, when they heard that Jesus was passing by, cried out, "Have mercy on us, O Lord, Son of David." Then the multitude warned them that they should be quiet. But they cried out all the more, saying, "Have mercy on us, O Lord, Son of David." So Jesus stood still and called to them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" There's that question again. What do you want? Jesus is on his way to die for the sins of mankind. He talks to his disciples. What do you want? And they're like, if we could just be, part of your kingdom. We could just be the best. And they argue back and forth, that kind of thing. By the way, they're going to argue at the Last Supper about the same thing. Well, Jesus is thinking, guys, within 24 hours, I'm going to be gone. I'm going to die for the sin of man. Don't you know how much it grieved him and how much he loved them? To have them listen to them talk. To know how they felt, and yet he loved them enough he was going to die on Calvary's cross. On the way, we find these two blind men, and they're crying out. These were two blind men. You think, well, Pastor, of course, they're going to have what they want. The one thing they want. Think about it. But look how they asked for it. They didn't ask like Zebedee's mom, "Hey, these guys have been with you for a long time, so I think they deserve to be at your left and your right hand." That's kind of the way we're hearing it, because that's why the 10 were a little upset. What did they say? "Have mercy on us." And the crowd said, "No, be quiet, we don't have that, And I'm going to be honest with you, hopefully we come out of this thing, and when you're talking about the mercy of God, people aren't trying to quiet you. Church does that sometimes. We don't have room for that. We've got to have the show must go on. That kind of thing. Have mercy. Have mercy on us, O Lord, Son of David. Again, O Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. What do you want? And notice what they said to him. Lord, that our eyes might be opened. I love verse 34. So Jesus had compassion, touched their eyes, and immediately their eyes received sight, and they followed him. Folks, in the end, and I don't want to make this is a true miracle. Don't get me wrong, I'm not allegorizing this in any way. But many of us for a long time maybe have run along blind, thinking about what's important. These fellows, what's their excuse? They were blind, okay? And what's the one thing they want to be able to see? Maybe the best thing for us during this time is to get a hold of our Bible, dust it off, open it up, with our family, read it and pray every night. God, what do you want us to do now? What do you want us to do when this is over? Do you want us to go back to living for us? Pretending we're living for you, It's amazing how we can wrap up what we do in such spiritual terms, right? It's amazing how we as parents sometimes, and I was, thank God, and I'm not saying I'm better than you and stronger than you or anything. Thank God, God woke me up over and over again if I started getting my priorities wrong. Because I've taught pastors' kids, and one pastor's kid in particular, I looked at him, I was coaching him, I said, "Where's your dad?" And he said, "I don't know." And I looked over, and his dad was taking a phone call, was a pastor, taking a phone call over there in the parking lot. Game's about ready to start, and I said, "Oh, he's taking a phone call." And he said to me, and I'll never forget it, he said, "He's always on the phone." And I thought, that's a kid hurting, right? Oh, that kid should understand. No, the father should understand that his first priority is to get his kid in heaven. First priority is to his family. And listen, your priority is not, think about it. What would it profit a man if he gained the whole world and yet lost his own soul? Your priority in life is not to get your son into the major leagues. Your priority is not to get your daughter into the WNBA or whatever, or not get, all of those things are great things. Your priority first, number one, is to make sure they know God. Not a shadow of what you think they should know of God, but they should know God. They should have their eyes open. Maybe our eyes have been blinded. And where we are today, say, "God, open my eyes during this time. Lord, what do you want me to do when I get out of here?" Man, we've been worried about people, whether they are going to live or whether they're going to die, but are we that worried of whether they're going to go to heaven or not? And you're social distancing yourself from neighbors because maybe you don't want to catch it or you don't want your neighbors to catch it from you. It'd be a shame, wouldn't it? Just kind of scary. I saw my grandson for the first time, right? And I didn't even get a kiss. Didn't even go up and kiss the little guy on the forehead because I'm like, I wouldn't want to be the one that if somehow, some way, I was carrying it, that I gave it to the little guy, right? And we're so careful to do that during this time. But how about their lost soul? Are we that worried about them? When this is all over, we're not going to walk up and rather than just talk about the weather and about our garden, we're going to tell them about Jesus. So in the end, the question is this: what do you want? What do you want? When this is all over, what is it you want to get on? I mean, do we want to go back and, oh man, I just hope the economy comes back? No, I hope America comes back to God. I hope America comes back to God. Let's pray today. Father, thank you so much for your word. Lord, I pray today, Lord, you call our nation back. Lord, you said if my people are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray, seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and heal their land. Lord, that was written to your people, those that are Christians. Right in there you said, if we would confess our sin, and Lord, today we're going to confess our sin. Maybe we've gotten off track. During this time that you've put us in captivity, you've locked us down, you've maybe kept us away from people, or you've helped us at least to think a little bit more, be a little more sober in our thoughts. Lord, I pray we'll come out of this, Lord, close to you. We'll realize that only you, Lord, are the one that knows. And then leave our homes when this is done, and Lord, go out into the highways and byways and hedges and compel people to come in, that your house might be filled, that people will be saved. Lord, we pray today, help us, Lord, in the midst of this, to, Lord, end up being the very best examples of who you are to a world that's lost. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen. And thank you so much. And we're not going to have an invitation today, but hopefully go home today, and if you have Facebook, share that, right? Share that with people. And